And hello everyone, and we have more news in time. Over the past month in the world of gymnastics, a huge number of events have happened, but all the most important and interesting I will tell you in this video. For those who do not yet know, I started a Telegram channel in which I publish all the news from the world of gymnastics as quickly and as efficiently as possible. I do not always express my opinion there, as I try to leave it for the channel, but for speed it is very cool thing. So join us. There we discuss some things with the followers. Well, let me remind you once again about the link where you can support my channel and me with donations. I will be pleased. I think everyone also remembers about subscribing to the channel. The girl wrote to me here that her YouTube was unsubscribed from my channel, so check if it unsubscribed you too. Thank you and enjoy your viewing. After the Russian Championship, Irina Viner spoke to the press and commented on the vaccination of the Russian national team. According to her, in the first wave she will not be vaccinated. They will see how things will be for the rest. And if everything goes well, then the whole team will be vaccinated soon. The issue of vaccination is in principle very controversial, and many people are categorically against it. Write in the comments your attitude to the COVID vaccine. A little good news. The World Cup in Sofia, which was supposed to take place in April, was shifted. Do not worry. Not later, but rather earlier. So it will be held from March 26 to March 28, and by the way, it will be the first World Cup this year. The statement is optimistic. There are no doubts that the competition will be held. Meanwhile, the first Grand Prix Stage this year will take place in Moscow from 17th to 21st of February. And hooray, good news! 20 countries have already announced that its gymnasts will actually come from other countries and will compete. Almost the same as the last year. The only caveat is with the audience. The organizers are trying to negotiate that the audience will be allowed in, but on one condition, that the hall will be half full. In February, it will be possible to watch the Grand Prix live in Moscow, with the participation of the best gymnasts. It already sounds cool and inspiring. Another piece of news related to the Russian national team. Recently on the social networks of all Russian Gymnastics Federation, information was published that a coach is being sought for the national team, namely for the position of coach of the Russian national team in groups exercises. And as soon as this information was released, I think the national reaction was panic that something had happened to the old coaches. And if you remember, now the senior team is being trained by two coaches. And I immediately had the question of which of the coaches was kicked out of the national team. As far as I know, Inna Bystrova, who previously coached the YAV team and since this year has been coaching the same senior team, once conflicted with Irina Viner, but on the other hand, who did not have a conflict with her. And I remained in confusion for several days, in the hope that nothing serious and terrible had happened. And after a few days and several dead nerve cells, the Gymnastics Federation clarified the question. Apparently I was not the only one who panicked. It turns out that from this year, they plan to represent Russia with as many as 3 teams in groups. And in this regard, a competition has been announced to find an additional coach. These are unexpected changes. That is, in fact, the national team wants to arrange competition not only for gymnasts, but also for coaches. At least this is how I understood this moment. Write in the comments what do you think about it. As for me, this new is a fire. In the meantime, Russia is looking for a new coach for the national team in Israel. The president of the Gymnastics Federation resigned. From the last news that we received from Mariana Vasilyeva, the coach of the Azerbaijani national team, became the manager of the Israeli national team. And as far as we know, she's a rather conflicted person, and as it was, I really want to believe that these two facts are unrelated, but simply a combination of circumstances. Another news about which I told in express mode on my Instagram and Telegram, which no longer seems so scary and relevant, but knowing what is happening in the world every day, who knows, maybe it will suddenly become more relevant again. So I'll tell you here about it. The media reported that Japan wants to cancel the Olympics, which should take place this year, despite the fact that the International Olympic Committee is categorically against the cancellation. The people of Japan and the Japanese government have already finally decided that they will cancel the Olympics. True, a refutation later came out that the government said this, and as it turned out, the initiative came only from the Japanese themselves. They seem to be very worried about the situation in the country with the COVID, and at the moment the Olympics is not threatened by the government and the IOC, but who knows what the desire of residents may lead to. Suddenly in Japan, they listen to the locals. Last summer, a series of videos began on my channel with accusation of violence against athletes but the coaches. It all started with a story in the Federation of Swiss Rhythmic Gymnastics where Bulgarian coaches worked, and who were fired with a scandal due to the inflated conflict in the media. The story was very ambitious, and I shot a great video about this. You can watch it on my channel. And quite recently, an investigation into this case was completed in Switzerland. Many experts, psychologists, doctors, sports officials were brought in, and elite athletes were questioned. In general, as is probably noticeable for Europe, the scandal has become something really large scale. So during the investigation, the commission was unable to prove all the accusations made by the athletes. However, they came to the conclusion that in gymnastics there is probably with the culture of education. 152 gymnasts were questioned, 46 lengthy interviews were conducted. They talked with parents, relatives, coaches and officials. In total, about 400 people were interviewed. As a result of the survey, more than 60% of gymnasts said that they are constantly insulted, made comments about their appearance, and regularly humiliated it. A quarter of the respondents were physically abused by the coaches. There was also a proven case when coaches forced injured athletes to train, who on the instructions of the doctors were told not to do so. The head of the Commission of Inquiry in the report said that many gymnasts were unable to reach the adult grades as they were too soon mentally, emotionally and physically broken. And this is one of the problems of gymnastics culture. Coaches do not prioritize the well-being of athletes, which increases the risk of injury and does not help in achieving high goals. After the scandal erupted from the Gymnastics Federation in Switzerland, a huge number of officials simply resigned, and now there are still several criminal cases on these issues that are not closed. In general, everything, as for me, is too complicated, and it turned into something really scary. Although I'm not sure why it's worse because of the extent to which the conflict was inflated or because of the situation itself. Well, if insults and stinging words addressed to athletes for Russia are definitely the norm, then assault is already is questioned. I definitely do not think this is normal, although gymnasts in Europe, as it seems to me, could call something that is not even considered a touch in Russia. In general, I have mixed feelings about this conflict. On the one hand, I understand that all this is not correct, and the mention of excess weight and insults and even more is a violence, both physical and psychological. But in Europe, everything can be taken too close to the heart and exaggerated to such an extent that in the reality, everything can be completely different. Write in the comments what do you think about these conflicts, on whose side and who do you believe. In early February, information appeared that a scandal broke out in Novosibirsk, at the school of the Olympic Reserve in connection with the dismissal of Ekaterina Gvozdetskaya, the coach who raised the Masters of Sports and even the Russian champion Anna Shiroki. The parents of the gymnasts and the athletes themselves were surprised and disappointed, so they decided to put pressure on the public and make the incident public so that the coach would not be fired. The information began to appear in all local media, on Instagram, and then parents turned out to the Ministry of Physical Culture, Sports of the Novosibirsk region. Parents expressed the opinion that this is the director's personal dislike for the coach. Especially this moment became unpleasant because the pupils of Catherine just had to go to the Masters of Sports and transfer the children at such a moment for the result clearly will not play an advantage. Catherine herself commented on this incident that she was fired because she works part-time, but she is not the only one at the school, and the head of the school didn't even want to talk to her. He approached her to sign the dismissal paper during the competition, when Catherine was preparing the team to enter the carpet. She was also officially told that another coach had been found instead. The school principal insists that this is not a layoff, but a layoff, since a full-time coach was found. It was decided to fire the part-time workers. The school director also said that the school does not have the opportunity to keep the coach. This is how it could have ended sadly, if it were not for social networks and the parents of the defenders, who reached out to the ministry and where the Minister of Sports promised to allocate a special rate at school for Catherine, so that she would stay working. In social networks, they're already grateful to the Ministry of Sports of Novosibirsk, but I still have concerns if the school director and the coach have such a conflict, then what kind of conflict she will now be training children here? I think it's not very comfortable, and in general, well, if this is a really personal dislike, then who knows what conditions will be created for her to work at. Parents are already writing posts with gratitude and are in positive mood. So I hope that everything will end well and the coach, whom children and parents love so much, will have no problem raising the new champions. Well, that's all for today. See you soon in the next video. Remember that I love you all, and for now, goodbye. The video was translated and dubbed by Alexandra Sinica.